I know that you don't like to talk about your life, but a guy with a freaking machete for an arm just chopped our bus in half.
I think one of the big things in the film is the face replacement stuff. Face replacements are often considered sort of throwaway of like, it's just a face replacement. But it's incredibly difficult to do those face replacements in a way that feels totally realistic and that is that hopefully an audience doesn't even notice, and it's obviously seamless, and that you believe that the actor is doing the actual stunts. Our actors did an awful lot of their own stunts, don't get me wrong. They were incredibly physical and incredibly well prepared. And had a great attitude towards sort of doing a lot of their own work. But there's a lot of stuff where we did rely on stunt performers, and we used machine learning as well as traditional face replacement techniques throughout the film. But I think with the machine learning, what that allowed us to do was to get some of the realistic physical reactions driven by the stunt performer. So when they looked like they were being hit, or the exertion that they were showing during a particularly strenuous moment, that strenuous sort of performance would come through using the AI, using the machine learning throughout. And that allowed us to give a performance that was very relevant to the actual, the physicality on set. So I think that stuff was some of our biggest headache work, as it were, of just trying to get those things to never sort of go into the uncanny valley and to always feel totally believable, and something I'm particularly proud of throughout the film.
Did you have a particular approach during shooting for face replacements? Was it always tracking dots? Was it a mix of things depending on the shot? Was there a particular template or structure you had?
It was a mix of things. It was very much, we knew the toolbox, and sometimes we would do traditional face replacements. Sometimes you'd project onto a 3D geometry, and sometimes you'd use machine learning. Joe, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the stuff in the bus fight?
Yeah, I mean, certainly that was definitely the challenge for the sequences that I was working on, with the bus sequence and the Macau escape stuff, and also particularly. I found that we got better at it while we shot, because I found, like, at the beginning we started with traditional techniques of face replacement. By the end of it, we were doing more sophisticated kind of machine learning aspects of it and how we were approaching it. And with that in mind, that certainly the couple of shots, there's a shot in the bus sequence where the bus finally splits in half, and it's a slow motion shot, and our hero Shang-Chi is diving between the back end of the bus and the front end of the bus. That shot was incredibly difficult, and no amount of planning. We literally planned that shot for months in advance. And then during the post, it was incredibly difficult to do, mainly because the stunt itself takes place in about 2.5 seconds, and happens in 2.5 seconds in real life. So imagine trying to carefully work with the lighting and all the stuff that needs to happen in 2.5 seconds when you're standing on set. When in actual fact it happens over, I think about 5 to 8 seconds in the final shot. So that one was certainly a challenge, and that one, Simu would actually perform that, but a lot of that stuff there, we had to actually sort of combine parts of his stunt body with parts of real performance from what Simu was doing. And the same went for another shot in the Macau sequence where Awkwafina is falling, and she falls, and so large portions of that was really careful, meticulous use of how we were approaching the face and the body and the digital work that had to be integrated with the live action and all that sort of stuff, because we tried to shoot as much as we possibly could. So we would shoot the real bus, we'd shoot the real actors, we'd shoot Razor Fist and his performance, and we'd shoot Awkwafina on her set, and then just only complement the digital work where necessary. So that was definitely a challenge.
我不想惹麻烦，那就把项链交出来。
You have the wrong guy. Does he look like he can fight? Come on, bro.
You okay?
Well, the bus bus sequence was probably the most involved sequence for us for the special effects department. We built two full-size buses on two different gimbals. One was an airbag gimbal that used hydraulics as well, and that was a lot of the sort of shots where the bus didn't have to be quite as, the moves weren't quite as large. We used that gimbal, and then when we had some really big moves and pulling big corners and the bus up on two wheels, things like that, that's when we used the big 6-axis gimbal, which was on a 10-degree angle, so it's 20 foot in the air at one end, or even more, I think, and then nose down. There's a sequence where Simu's flying up over the top of the bus, and the buses are swinging around the corner. So we really did get the bus on the gimbal to do that move, which was actually impossible for a real bus. So that was a pretty crazy move, and we've had to sort of find the line between not tearing the gimbal apart and not making it impossible to do the stunt. So it was a lot of tweaking on that one, working with the stunt department. But yeah, the biggest sequence for us would have been the bus.
In terms of that bus, Dan, what I have never quite understood is when you're operating something like that, how you get so much movement that matches what a real bus does. And I know it's movie movement sometimes, but how do you reference what, the kind of movement that a bus would make to replicate it on set, if you know what I mean?
Sure. Well, we watched a real bus driving along. We have bendy buses in Australia, and it's actually seeing the bus drive along, see how it interacts, see how it moves, see how does someone standing on a bus, what do they do? So you're obviously looking at that to, try and keep it as real as possible. And then also you've got to lean into what the previs is doing and what the bus is doing for that piece of action. So we would look at the previs or the stunt vis and go, okay, for that particular moment, the bus is swinging left and it goes over a bump. So then we program that move in. And then when we shoot, we replay that move over and over again so they can fight to that move. Sometimes there's a tweak. We might make the move longer or make it shorter or make it less violent because they can't do a flying kick because, it's too unsteady, whatever. So, there's tweaks on set, but we definitely start with what looks real and then program based off the previous.
It was quite interesting. I remember Chris, myself, and Bill Pope went and jumped on that bus in San Francisco. So we were doing a scout, and we're like, "Oh, look, here's the bus." So we all jumped on it, and I think the location people were like, "Where'd they just go?" And so the three of us ran off, and we were all standing there with our phones, referencing all the light, how it came in, and actually quite interested about how, because we knew we were going to shoot that on a blue screen set down in Sydney. And then actually trying to work with how Bill was trying to figure out how best to light that. And the interesting part about that is the sequence, although very well stunt-bized, we needed to make sure that shots would cut from one shot to the next. And so trying to figure out a lighting that you can cut in that and yet make it photoreal at the same way. So I certainly remember sending a lot of stuff from my phone recorded on that to Luma to say, here, this is what it really looks like. And most of the time we'd look at it and go, looks kind of exactly what we did.
We had one particular shot that was technically our toughest, which is the one where we're following the demons down into this big, water tornado, feeding the beast all the souls. And it's an extremely long take in the first place. The water itself was a huge simulation. We needed to make sure it interacted with the beast and make sure that the beast was interacting with the water. So there's a lot of to and fro between departments. And it was being water. It's traditionally difficult anyway to simulate, or at least render intensive. To give you an idea of how render intensive it was, we had, I think it took a few million threaded render hours just to render the water. To put that in context, it would take sort of your average home computer, high-end home computer, around 25 years to render just the water on its own. So it was it was a hefty shot for sure, and it gave the rest of the company a little bit of a few heart palpitations while we were taking up the entire render wall. But no, it was a good one, and it included everything as well. It had riding dragons, demons, souls, effects, water. So that was technically, I think, our most complex shot that we worked on.
Because what's interesting about that sequence to me is that it's so huge, and of course there's so much CG work in there, but you're often close up on the actors. You're feeling the emotion of the shot. And I of course have talked to you about some of the live action shoots for that, and the fact that they're riding these kind of huge stuffies sometimes. I wonder if Sean and Chris, you can both talk about that side of that sequence, giving as much practical stuff as possible where it's possible.
Yeah, I think obviously what we have the gimbal work that Dan and his team created with a buck that these characters were riding on, and that buck was based on geometry that was provided from Weta, so it was all it was all sort of hopefully worked together very well. One of the things we obviously wanted to do was make it always trying to think, okay, how would you shoot this? How could you possibly shoot this? So if you're going to be on close up on someone and you're really trying to shoot it with a drone or a helicopter or whatever else it may be, how do you possibly do that? And is the camera operator still sitting on the dragon and flying along with you? So it was always thinking about how do you make it feel as real as possible, what sort of lens choices you would do, how much camera shake do you have, and then making it as physical as possible with wind and with rain. We had blasting our actors with wind and rain, which they weren't necessarily that keen on, but I kept promising that it would make things feel more visceral and more real. And I think that kind of stuff was paramount, along with the movement and what Dan's team were able to provide based on the animation tests that Weta did. It was this sort of cyclic, iterative sort of versions to trying to get something that felt as real as possible, still maintaining that some fantastical, we're in a fantastical world. We can't pretend we're not, but you try and keep it as grounded as possible and as intimate, and make it, you're about the characters. It has to be about the characters, it has to be about the performances and their relationship and what they're going through.